To go ahead and start the first assignment, you need to open up your draft, which is on my webpage. So it'll look like this. We're going to go ahead and add a few things so that we can do the first part of your assignment. If you want to follow along on part one, there are 3 parts to the assignment. On part one, it's going to ask us to put in a bunch of, to play around with the if function and get a little more practice with that. And it's going to ask us to assume that C2 equals 16, so we're going to go ahead and put C2 equals 16, and H12 is 80, and L3 is 121, and M14 is 25, and G4 is 15. Now I'm just going to randomly pick any cell. It doesn't matter which one you do because I want to be able to enter if functions so that I can determine what the value is, because that's what you're going to need to write that down on your sheet. That'll be something I'll be checking. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and highlight a cell, and we're going to type the equal sign and if. And then if you put the parentheses in, it tells you, and you've seen this before, exactly what we need to do. So let's do our logical test, and it gives it to you. C2 is greater than H12. So if, and actually what I wanted to do is let's go back after C2, tap F4 so it becomes an absolute, and after H12, tap F4. I could have done that when I was putting it in and forgot. So, comma, no spaces. If that's true, let's say we're going to want it to put a 50 in the cell, and if it's comma, and if it's false, let's have it put a 0. And then we end with the parentheses and hit enter, and we have a 0. So that tells us it's false. We come back to this sheet, oops, and we type in false, or not type, you'll write in false. Now we do the next one, L3 equals M14. So let's go back over here. Let's change our formula. If L3, and then we can F4 equals M14, and we can F4, comma, no spaces. We want to, if it's true, we want it to show a result of 50, comma. If it's false, we want it to show a result of 0. End our parentheses and hit enter, and it shows a 0. That tells us that that's false. Let's go back up here. Enter our next one. If M14, and we will, oops. If M14 plus 15 times H12 divided by 10 is less than or equal to L3, comma. So I've typed in exactly what's on the sheet. So I'm double checking. If M14 plus 15 times H12 divided by 10 is less than or equal to L3, comma. If that's true, I want it to show a value of 50, comma. If it's false, I want it to show a value of 0. And then I end my parentheses and hit enter. And it shows a value of 0. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to type in false. You're going to write it in. So you'll need to continue all of those to determine the answers for those. Okay? Okay. Now I'm ready to start part 3. I'm going to let you work on part 2 on your own. That is really about understanding the difference between relative reference and absolute reference and mixed reference, knowing where to put your $sign in Excel in a formula. So if you've got questions, you'll need to ask me specifically. For part 3, you want to go to cell C8, and you want to put in a formula that divides the sum of cells C5 through C7 by C4. So the first thing we want to do is put an equal, and then we want to say, all right, let's pick C5, and we're going to add C6, and we'll add C7. And I'm going to put all of that in parentheses, because I want to divide the entire thing by C4. I do not just want to divide C7 by C4. So if you were to take the parentheses away, so let me show you something, and just do that, what you're saying is take C5 plus C6 and then add C7 divided by C4. That's not what we want. We want to take the whole thing and divide it. Okay, so now we've got all of it added up and then the total divided by C4. That's what we want. We say enter, and it comes up with a value of 6. What we're told in part 3, number 1, is that we want the formula, when it copies, to adjust to the cell references according to the destination. That means we want all relative. So now we're going to copy it over to D, E, and F8 and have the response there. Okay. Now we're going to enter a formula in G5, so let's go up to G5, that divides the sum of cells C5 through F5. So let's start there. Let's do equal. We want to divide the sum of C5 through F5, so we'll hit C5 plus D5 plus E5 plus F5. All right, so we're going to divide the sum of cells C5 through F5 by cell B5. We want to write the formula so that when we copy it to G6 and G7, Excel will adjust all the cell references according to the destination. That means that we want exactly what we have, no absolutes. We want it to update according to where we copy it. So we'll go ahead and put that number in there, and then we copy that down using our autofill to G6 and G7. Okay. Number 3, we want to enter a formula in cell C9, so let's go to C9. And we want to divide the sum of cells C5 through C7, so let's start there. We're going to sum up C5. Oops. There we go. So we're going to sum up C5 through C7, divide that by cell C4. Oops. But we want to write the formula using an absolute cell reference so that when we copy the formula to D9 through F9, so we're going to copy it across, we want C4 to remain absolute. So right here, C4, I'm going to go ahead at this point and hit F4, and we're going to make that absolute. Then we can enter and copy. Number 4, we want to enter a formula in H5 that divides the sum of cells C5 through F5. So let's start there. C5 So we added C5 through F5 by B5. We're going to divide that by B5. We want to write the formula using an absolute cell reference so that when we copy the formula to cells H6 and 7, so we're going to copy down, cell B5 remains absolute, so at this point we will tap F4 and you'll notice that B5 becomes absolute, and we can hit enter and then we can copy it down. And then we want to apply a worksheet name, which you all know how to do. When you are done, then you can save this, and when it's time for me to grade it, open it up.